Please be seated. Part of the program has been an address by the representative of the class of 2000. The students elect their...
Be totally serious and talk about how we should all go out and change the world, make it a better place. I think I'll just do one better, and I'll make this speech all about the importance of making a bunch of money and owning all kinds of stuff. I was also told by a number of people to remember to keep it short, so I tried to remember all this really important and helpful advice when I was preparing this yesterday. I think it'd be appropriate to share some of the many amusing stories of mine and other law school experiences. Like, the first one that comes to mind was a day in constitutional law where we all enjoyed a classmate being grilled for about a half hour on 6 different possible meanings of the placement of a comma in the Constitution, or being one of 7 people in a row called on that weren't prepared for class that day. Other memories we'll look back fondly upon are days spent preparing for finals, or walking out of a final to realize there were about 15 different issues that we didn't bother to address that somebody else told you that they did, and you just assumed that your time in law school was officially over. Not that we won't laugh at all this later, but there are the more pleasant memories, like in orientation when we're all herded in like cattle, nervously introducing ourselves while trying to figure out which people were going to still be here today. Such expectations. I thought for sure I was going to let that get that top of the class award the other night. I must have done some of my math wrong somewhere. All that class preparation and participation for nothing. We were all so happy to be there on that first day, wondering if we were supposed to be wearing a suit the first day or what was the deal with that. All of us looking lost, taking those flattering Facebook pictures. I know mine kind of looks like Manson in there. And there were the days when we were enjoying the comedic value of the ISBA presidential campaigns. Or the day Professor Ward kept mentioning that we're going to school so that we wouldn't have to be plumbers. I think he was just using this example because he was trying to compare a profession where you could make good money, but you'd have to actually earn it as opposed to being a lawyer. And, from the very top row of the classroom, I yelled, "Hey, my dad's a plumber." Professor Ward wasn't his usual composed self, trying to talk his way on that one. Well, you're supposed to write what you know, so I figured I'd relate a few of my personal experiences in law school. I think they're funny, and besides the votes, who gets to give this speech for a long time ago. So, one incident I remember was in second semester contracts 2, where we had to research and write our first professional brief. I recall it was due on a Monday morning to ensure an entire weekend, or a Saturday day and Sunday night were ruined. And I was up all night trying to make sense of a lot of cases that seemed to be relevant. And I recall myself on that Sunday night thinking about the Simpsons episode where Bart had to learn American history, and one night to avoid repeating a grade, he tried to stay up all night studying, and then he finally just prayed for a snowstorm in order to buy some more time. Well, Bart actually got a snowstorm, and I was up all night, and about an hour before the deadline, I was about 6 hours away from being done with my brief. I called in to tell them about some printer problems that I was having. And they were surprisingly understanding when I called, so I just threw my brief together and headed for the law school. I was only a little late, actually, and I noticed about halfway there that there wasn't really any traffic out. I was driving through some drifts that weren't on the road earlier, and I turned in my paper and noticed that I was only about the 7th person on the list to sign in. The secretary informed me that they extended the deadline to whenever students could get their paper in because of the big snowstorm. Apparently she couldn't mention that when I called with my printer problem. She figured that I should be able to go back home and bring it back whenever I got done either. So, one of my favorite memories of the 3 years in the Boyd Law Building was also the first year. Our first exposure to actual law school classes is where the entire class is broken down into small sections in the first year. And I was in section 3 with Professor Peter Blank for contracts. And an elite group later be known as the Section 3 All-Stars, handpicked by the dean himself as a control group for some sort of NASA experiment. Professor Blank seemed to want us to relax and try to ease a lot of the anxiety that comes with just starting out in law school. He made it apparent right away that he preferred a more relaxed classroom environment, and I appreciated it, and he appreciated a little back and forth with the students. It all kind of started between Professor Blank and I one day when he was making some analogy to paying more when you buy milk or bread at a Quick Trip convenience store. Well, I corrected him and I told him that people don't shop at Quick Trip for anything other than beer, and it's usually cheaper there than most places. So this apparently established a rapport between myself and Peter. A couple weeks later, on a Friday before a home football game, I was told that I'd be up to discuss the material to be covered on Monday, the following Monday. So being the first year, I actually went home and read the cases. Coincidentally, this was the same weekend when the former star and current radio announcer for Iowa football, Ed Podolak, was found late Saturday night after the game passed out in the middle of campus and arrested for public intox. On the following Monday morning, I found myself back in contracts class, ready to take on whatever questions Peter would fire at me. He opened right away with a softball question regarding the facts of the case, or something like that. And, I seemed to be having a case of opening night jitters and was struggling to say the least. Professor Blank got tired of trying to help me, and he called on the other person that was also up that day. My partner was having about as much luck as I was, so Professor Blank just came back to me. I was just staring at my book. I definitely recognized the handwriting in the margins. There was a lot of highlighting in my book, but for some reason the answers just weren't coming to me. Professor Blank was trying to help me out, but it wasn't getting anywhere, so his next question was, Mr. McManus, were you out with Ed Podolak this weekend? Yeah, everyone had a good laugh on me, sort of like right now. And somehow got through class that day. The following weekend was another game, a home game for the Hawks. After the game, some friends from out of town and I were at a local establishment where they also happen to serve cold beverages. I was at the bar ordering, I think, another Shirley Temple or Virgin Daiquiri, and I noticed the man next to me was wearing a nice leather jacket. I struck up some conversation regarding the jacket and was just talking to him. And I told him he looked really familiar, and then he introduced himself as none other than Ed Podolak. Who's laughing now? I thought to myself, so I couldn't resist the opportunity to tell Mr. Podolak, I call him Eddie now, about the class with Professor Blank. Eddie ended up hanging out with us for most of the night. Well, because of my story, he decided to give me his hat, and he autographed it for verification. So I walked into contracts on Monday morning just beaming. And I showed Professor Blank the hat, and before he could say anything, he said, oh no, I hope you didn't tell him what I said in class. So then he asked me if he could have the hat. I don't think so. I took that abuse. I earned that hat. There's plenty more stories where that came from, but I was told to keep it short and also to avoid an agenda. So my only agenda is simply that I've proven myself that a kid who I wouldn't consider to be book smart, but believes everything his parents tell and show him about the rewards of hard work, can do just about anything. And all of us are here because of hard work. Law school isn't a cakewalk for anybody. We all learn that some people are just better at lying about how hard they're working. Nobody's getting away with anything. How could we? All the professors already had seen it or did it long before we got here. In closing, I would like to recall the last day of a class with Professor Tompkins that I'll never forget, even though he likes to say that we won't remember anything he has said 10 minutes after he says it. After Wednesday night senior banquet, where Professor Tompkins took the opportunity to embarrass me, I swore revenge when I got here. The truth is, despite being the best-looking guy he knows, I know he can't do the splits. So anyway, on that last day of class, JT, as we like to call him, told us a story about his favorite movie, appropriately for an Iowa graduation ceremony, Field of Dreams, and how in the end of the movie, where Kevin Costner's character, Ray Kinsella, is arguing with Shoeless Joe Jackson about what was in it for him, and Ray had plowed under his crops and risked everything to build this baseball diamond, and had yet to ask for anything in return. Shoeless Joe just looks at him and says, "Is that why you did this, Ray? Is what's in it for you?" And Professor Tompkins told us that day, this is a message he wanted us all to carry with us. And, you know, just do things if it seems like the right thing to do. And I couldn't help but agree with him. Don't always do things if there's something simply to gain for yourself. Don't always worry about what's in it for you. And I was also told by a business person in Iowa City that deals with all kinds of professional grad students every day. She said that she can always tell the law students because they're so serious and they don't smile as much. Is this because we're learning every day how to constantly blame someone for something? Or is this because law students are just straight shooters? I don't know. I know this may come as a shock to many of you, but I never let myself get too serious. And Professor Tompkins, after today, I will still answer to Bubba, although I do like the sound of T.U.G. McManus. And with that in mind, I'd like to say thank you to my class for bestowing such an honor upon me. And I'd also like to again thank my parents for raising me right, and my family and friends for all your support. I couldn't have done it without all of you.
Thank you, Todd. We're very honored to have with us today to present the principal commencement address, a high-ranking official from Washington. John Podesta is a Midwesterner. In some way, he's returning to his roots today. John grew up in Chicago. He went to college and graduated from Knox College, just across the river in Galesburg, in 1971. Instead of coming to Iowa to law school, however, he went to Georgetown. And like many people who go to Washington, D.C. with some interest in politics, John has never come back to the Midwest except on short visits. He left law school, graduated in 1976, and went right into work in Washington, first in the Department of Justice, Lands and Waters Division, and then he started working on Capitol Hill, a number of jobs in the House of Representatives and the Senate. When President Clinton was elected in 1992, I had to think for a minute, he started some service in the White House, or in the Clinton administration rather, from 1993 to 95, and he went back later as a senior advisor to the president. And then in 1998, he became the White House Chief of Staff for the Clinton administration. Now, in introducing John, I want to draw a clear line between the fiction of The West Wing, which many of you may become enthralled with, a new television program focusing on the staff support